Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Anna Sabramowicz here. If you haven't been here before, I am a scenario designer, and also I help other instructional designers and learning experience designers craft their own awesome scenarios. And the reason I'm here is because I had a fabulous strategy session this morning with somebody, and they brought up this point, which I think is actually really awesome because I've talked about this before, and I thought, why don't I bring it up here? And the challenge is content, right? Let's say you're starting a new scenario project, and you get a ton of content up front. And one of the things that we feel, I think, as instructional designers, because we are getting all this content, we feel obligated to look at all of it and somehow digest all of it to give us the scope for our project somehow. But this is not the right approach. So the person I was talking to this morning, they said, how do I do that? Because a lot of times what I do is I get like 2 or 3 manuals, right? Starting a new project. This is a medical area, so they have tons of resources, tons of manuals. Now they're moving a lot of things online. They're finding that a lot of the things that they are designing is very content heavy, and so surprise, surprise, the first thing they do, they send to this poor lady is a whole lot of content. And she said she gets lost in it. So how do you address that, right? How do you address that? And how do you create scenarios out of a whole bunch of content? Well, the thing is, you can't. It doesn't work. If you start with content, what the danger is that you'll be trying to take all of that content and doing 2 things with it. One, you are going to be trying to sift through it to figure out maybe some of this is actually useful, maybe some of it isn't. You don't necessarily know because you're not the subject matter expert, right? So what happens is, instead of actually focusing on the most important things, which is where people make the most erroneous decisions, where people make the biggest mistakes, where people have the biggest gaps, you end up using maybe your first meeting with the subject matter expert to help you sift through where those things are in the content. So you're using the content as a baseline for all of your conversations. You're using it as a baseline for your designs, which is very, very bad. Don't do that. Stay away from the content. The content is there to support you after you've already made some decisions about what is important. So that's how you start. So the first thing you start with is a framework. So one of the things that you need to do is, and this is the kind of conversation we had. So when I said you need to have a framework, this lady said, yeah, but how do I know what's it going to be? Now, if you've done some analysis of your audience, you've figured out what the actual goal of this training is, the business goal, and where the gaps lie, then you'll figure out if it's a scenario or not. Is it a scenario? Is a behavior change needed? Is a change in mindset needed? Or is the training, most of it already available, but people aren't seeing that they actually need to take it because they don't perceive their gaps or something like that? So you already know you're going to create a scenario. And the way I want you to think about this is that pretend and it's hard for us designers to do this because a lot of us work in digital spaces, and digital spaces are infinite. And the authoring tools give us infinite options, and we can basically build forever, right? And there's a danger in that because you bloat things, and also you come up with your ideas in software, which is also not a good place to start a learning intervention, right? So when I said you have to have a framework, she said, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, you have to have a constraint. So pretend that you are a store, and you only have, let's say, 6 or 8 products on your shelves. And those shelves, the products have certain characteristics. And you only offer a certain product to a person based on their need and the problem that you're trying to solve. So a scenario is one of those products. So you have a framework for it. And then you say, okay, based on your need, based on the problem you're trying to solve, a scenario is a good fit here. All right, here it is. Voila. And the person might say, well, no, I'm looking for a car. Okay, well, this is the product, right? So what happens is when you set the constraints of your deliverable from the very beginning, it's a beautiful thing, because what happens is then your conversations are not focused around, and even your thinking is not focused around how you're going to take all that content and squish it into your framework. What you can then do is, once you have this framework set up and you know what you're going to deliver, basically you are starting with the end product in mind. Everybody knows what they're working towards on your team. This is your special scenario framework. Once that's established, and once you've got it down, it's not like you're establishing it every time. There's just minor tweaks you make to the final product, but you know exactly what is needed to make this happen, which also makes your production and the inputs needed to make this happen way, way faster and more efficient. So then, once you know your framework, you move into the SME interview system. There's some people who think that you have to really, one, indoctrinate your SME to help them understand what's going on, teach them about e-learning, help them learn adult learning theory. No. A subject matter expert is an expert in their field. And the reason they're expert in their field is because they focus on that field. The reason you're an expert in your field is because you focus on that field. So to try and teach them everything that you know, or everything they need to understand about learning in your little meetings, is kind of silly, right? Let them be the subject matter expert. Let them be the expert in their field. Your job is to interview them so it feels effortless to them, minimal friction, but you have a system that feeds the framework so that you can create something powerful, and then they can revisit it to make sure that it is valid. This is not about making this person hate you because you're stumbling around or trying to make them come up with things that are very relevant for learning. That's not their job. That's your job. So you have to have a system to interview them in a way that is effortless to them. In fact, effortless to you as well, because it's a system and it feeds beautifully into this framework. Then after you've got that captured, you can use these responses to create an outline and a script for your scenario. And once you've got that done, baby, you are moving on to working prototype. And this is not complicated. This is also not very painful for anybody. This is a very seamless process. But you have to start with the framework. You don't start with the content, because the content, you know where we bring it in? Right here. Because then you can see which things people actually will need to get through the scenarios and be efficient and make good decisions. Or what kind of ahas will come up that they'll say, you know what, I actually don't know how to do this. Where's that info that I need? Can you serve it up to me now? This might be the place. So this is something you can do here. Content belongs after you've tested to see how little information somebody needs to make good decisions. So yeah, hope that was helpful. Now, if you have any questions about that, or if you want to learn more about frameworks, period, because I think a lot of people, they think they know what scenarios are. They think they know what a scenario project looks like, but really they don't. So if you wanted to learn more about what that actually looks like, what you need to make scenarios a reality where you work and make them a pleasant experience for everybody, a fun experience even, go to scenariodesignSecrets.com. And there what you'll see is a training video where I show you how I use the framework, what you need to make it happen, and an opportunity to book a call with me so that if this is something you want to get really good at and join me for some like targeted practice and feedback, then we can have a chat. So yeah, if you have any other questions about scenarios, of course, please put them underneath the video. The other thing I suggest is every Wednesday I'm running it's called Whiteboard Wednesday. And this next coming up one, I will be working through my framework, but also I'll be running it live on Facebook. So if you wanted to join me, I'll be doing that on Wednesday. So if you're interested, just let me know, maybe put a happy face or a weird face around this video, and I'll know that you're planning on joining me, and it'll probably run around the same time as this one. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, and take care, friend. Bye.